Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Either we're talking about a very specific movie, or I lied about my qualifications to a group of hackers and what I could do to help their organization.
Well, Joe, as we all know, who is a function of what, and what you are is a man in a mask.
Yeah, so don't bother asking me what my qualifications are or for a resume. I just make a
Yeah.
podcast.
Yeah. and, and once again, if you're one of those audio only folks, it's
Mm-hmm.
criminal what we get away
Yeah.
with
Mm-hmm.
in front of the camera.
Yep.
So if you missed that one, just check out the first 10 seconds of the YouTube
Yes.
program.
I mean, you do miss out on exactly like 0.25% of all of our jokes that we have on the podcast if you are just listening to the audio. Which,
Yeah.
no shame in that. If you're driving and listening to this, you definitely should not be watching YouTube right now.
But if you're listening through the Braille version, you're probably going, "What the hell are they doing right now?
Here.
This is ridiculous." Yeah, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, if you were watching the visual version of the program, Joe was wearing a Guy Fawkes mask that was popularly worn in 2005's V for Vendetta, which is our latest movie review.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. And I mean, what a time! What a time for superhero movies around this time too, right? This is a
Yeah.
time where it's actually flipped, and Marvel's movies were either like a 50-50 shot of being great or terrible, and DC kind of had their shit together. Which we're all wondering, like, what happened since then? Probably good writing, solid direction. Um, yeah, those things just said waved bye bye to the DC universe for quite a while now.
Do we really want to claim that DC had their shit together, or did Marvel just not have a grasp on what they wanted to do yet? Because I feel like
Mm-hmm.
early superhero films were all kind of rough, right? I mean, shit, the Fantastic Four was making a
Oh,
Hemi reference for Christ's sake.
I mean, when you have a sponsor, Mark, like they get a Hemi reference, all of the Transformers are GM vehicles. It's you have to lean in where the money is.
One of the lamest references of all time is that it's got a Hemi. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's like
Really? You put a Hemi
mm.
in your flying car? No, you didn't. Come on, Reed Richards.
I know I just gave you some shit for it, but this was an interesting
Mm-hmm.
era of superhero films because we were seeing, that this is a post Spider-Man world,
Mm-hmm.
and some people were taking chances, but not nearly the amount of chances that you would get with the first Guardians of the Galaxy kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's like going,
We're
like
going
what
with Guardians.
yeah.
We're going with these guys. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then like your average, moviegoer is like, what the fuck? Is that a talking raccoon? What is this? And but in
Mm-hmm.
this era though, I mean, suddenly we're getting like Tom Jane, and his Punisher getting going.
Mm-hmm.
I think
Yep.
we just had the third Spider-Man. I think we were
Yep.
maybe in that
Toby is now
in that
officially
area.
exiting the scene until much later. And
Yeah.
sadly, Macho Man Randy Savage uh, was only in the one
Mm.
Spider-Man movie. Really,
Yeah.
he had time to be in all three of those.
His playtime is over. Unfortunately. Yeah.
I made that
Yeah.
reference with some high school students today, and one of them got it. And it made me so happy.
Man, that's
Oh,
what's funny, Joe, is that we're making 20-year references already, eh,
mm-hmm.
well over 20 years at this point.
Yep.
And this is one of those films that unfortunately does not have a lot of quotables, mostly because I think there's way too many alliterations with the
I
letter
was gonna
V.
say with between the alliteration and the other quotables basically being Shakespeare, it
Yeah.
is not the easiest one for probably the common moviegoer or comic book
You,
movie watcher. Not to
you could
like,
just say
yeah,
you fucks. Just say you fucks. For for,
no
for
one.
most of you.
Like 5 of you read Macbeth, and 4 of you was because you had to for school.
Yeah, for most of you uncultured fucks there in the audience, you ain't gonna get none of this, okay?
Mhm.
This
Yes,
this
and
ain't gonna.
And
Come on.
to be perfectly clear, I am one of the 4 who had to read Macbeth for school. That's not like put the audience beneath us. That's
Yeah.
not happening here.
Are you kidding me? This was 2005, Mark, which
Mm-hmm.
was the very much rookie, like hasn't even been called up from AAA yet. He's still in the minor leagues figuring out his game.
Mm-hmm.
So don't worry. This was I was one of those fucks, okay? But I will say this
Mm-hmm.
though. So I was familiar with V for Vendetta at this point in
Yes.
time
Mm-hmm.
because I mean, believe it or not, I spend a lot of time in libraries as one of those consistent things on every military base.
Yep.
And so you would occasionally see the libraries have comics.
Mm-hmm.
And it was actually at a time before that really got popular, believe it or not.
Yeah.
It was kind of rare. But the one thing I always
Mm-hmm.
remembered seeing though, like time and time again, it's been out since 1988. The actual trade series of V for Vendetta has been
Mm-hmm.
around. So
Yeah.
yeah, you would see this was one of those comics though that you couldn't strike up a conversation with someone over.
No,
Yeah,
you really couldn't. I think that could be true for a lot of like DC's Vertigo division. Is it
yeah,
was meant to be this sort of it was kind of like this area for DC where they could get away with doing more adult things that normally they wouldn't do with their mainline characters. And even then, like
yeah.
you still like Vertigo still got some shit for doing it. I believe there's one part where I think in the Watchmen there's like a masturbating reference, and so one of the higher ups actually calls down and says people don't masturbate in the DC universe, and it's like, are you sure? Are you sure? No one, no one, no one, no one masturbates in the DC universe. You're telling me Kyle Rayner, my favorite Green Lantern, who is like got girlfriends dying left and right on him, doesn't just get lonely and rub one out once in a while? No,
Hey,
he totally does.
let's just apply logic here, okay? Let's just say this: if Superman doesn't jack off, then what happens in the bizarro land here?
Mm-hmm.
The
I,
opposite must be true, Joe.
and even then, like if he does that, like he has to be like not in an enclosed area because that's got to be like a shotgun going off. It's just gonna go
Yeah.
right through the roof. And from my knowledge, Superman, a good chunk of his life, did have to live in like an apartment where he is not at the top level because he was a journalist. So he would have had to go to like to the mountains or at least in space.
God
We've
damn
thought
it.
about this way too much.
I'm surprised we haven't had a Superman epic orgasm moment yet on this program.
I mean, it's like I think when we eventually will just have to get to like watching Mallrats for this, and we can break down every single time like we have like superhero sex obsessions in that show, that movie, which Superman having sex with Lois Lane is one of them, and how Lois Lane should be dead after that whole thing. I mean, when we do Mallrats, we'll dedicate a good 20 minutes to like Superman having sex.
Now all I can think of is just him like going ah, and it's like the side of a mountain just wrecked, just like falling straight down because it's just been shot right off.
Oh god.
Welcome to the DC universe. We take ourselves seriously. Yeah.
Very. but anyway,
yes.
so
Yes.
Vertigo is meant to be this more adult place for DC writers to actually write about things that they want to, that don't have to revolve around kind of like that, I guess, without having kid gloves, because clearly even in the comic books the good guys don't always win. They have heroes die, loved ones die. They can do those stories, but Vertigo could do even more. They could take things further and have death not just be something that happens, but it could happen brutally in the Vertigo era of the DC universe. So
Yeah.
V for Vendetta, much like the Watchmen, was a spot where you could have these more adult storylines take place. And
Yeah.
we all going to, at this point in time, say in the podcast, we will not be comparing the graphic novel V for Vendetta to the movie. That's a whole other episode if we wanted to do it.
I was going to say, at least not at length, but I think it's going to be
Mhm.
good for some of the commentary as to why
Oh yeah.
it
Mhm.
did change, which is we'll weave that in there strategically for you.
Mhm.
But this So this series was written by Alan Moore, as you mentioned, of the Watchmen.
Mm-hmm.
He would also popularly be behind the Killing Joke, one of the most popular Batman storylines that would come
Yes.
out.
Mm-hmm.
The very vicious one, by the way. We've also got David Lloyd, who is technically the creator of the designs for V and the Guy Fawkes mask that you donned just a few moments ago.
Yes. Again,
Yeah.
for those of you listening to the podcast, I'm now holding it up and presenting it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And Tony Ware was the third head of this creation.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as the movie goes, because like you said, we don't want to spend a ton of time on the series, the trade, whatever you want to call it. But the actual movie itself kind of feels like a reunion of sorts on the people that made The Matrix.
Yeah, I
And
mean the fact that you got Hugo Weaving being our big guy here, V himself, which nice to have him be the hero of the story and not evil internet agent this time around.
Yes. But I'm not even talking actors. I'm talking behind the camera, which this was directed by James McTeague. It was actually his first film that he directed, but he had actually been an assistant director on the Matrix series. So he worked directly behind the Wachowski sisters. And so he had a chance to learn from them quite a bit, understand their style and what they were kind of going for. And oddly enough, you would kind of see some of that in this movie.
Yeah,
but
not too much though, because like usually, like I think when a lot of people like flash back to the Matrix, we think of like the slow motion fight stuff that happens, and I think you really only get one of those in this movie, one slow down fight, which we'll break down towards the end of the program.
Yeah, that's a fun scene, by the way.
Very fun.
Looking forward to that. Yes, and speaking of the Wachowski sisters, they were also producers on this film, so it literally was a reunion. But outside of them, though, we have Joel Silver and Grant Hill, also producers on this. Not to be confused with the NBA
star, no.
the NBA star Grant Hill. Yes. But yeah, to your point, Joe. Yes, we have Hugo Weaving, who steps in. And I say steps in because he wasn't the original V, believe it or not. So
was it
if
Will
you're
Smith?
Familiar. Yeah, that's right.
Also like a Matrix reference.
Can't imagine that. Will Smith song for V for Vendetta.
I mean, do you remember like, God, like, I'm sorry, Gen Z, but you missed out on like the best part of Will Smith's career where he would make a movie and the best part of the movie was the song he made for the movie. Like,
I think
it was brilliant every single time.
The animated film Spies in Disguise. I think he actually did a track for that one. My kids love it. It's when he's a secret agent, gets turned into a pigeon. And
good stuff.
It's fantastic. It's great cinema. But yes. So okay. So he is not the original V, though. Hugo Weaving is not the original V. He was actually played by James Purefoy, and if you remember A Knight's Tale, he plays the up and coming heir to the throne that's joining all these jousting tournaments, and people are like, nope, will not. He's royalty, not fighting him. That's James Purefoy. He was also in the first. He was in the first Resident Evil as like the main bad guy. So. So dude, he actually does a ton of scenes for this movie, like in costume, under the mask, gets through, I think it was something like 60% of the filming and goes, I can't do this anymore.
Okay, guys, I'm out. Guys, gotta stop.
Yeah, I mean, Peacock's got to fly. And James Purefoy was just like, I can't do this anymore, guys. I got to get out of here. This is not acting,
Oh, he just has
no scripts on the set. No scripts on the set.
No scripts.
Yeah, dude, he checks out. He's just like, yep, saw you. He gone.
Okay.
Yeah, dude. So actually, Hugo Weaving, when he finally gets the role, he's not doing any of the live action. They've already had people stand in to do that. So he's just voicing it over. That's why it literally sounds like a voiceover, because that's what it is.
That's an easy job. Good for him. I mean, there are some parts where like, because I think Hugo Weaving's in front of the camera a couple times, right? There are some
Yes.
scenes towards the end of the movie where you don't see his face and it is his silhouette, but you can very much tell, hey, that's Agent Smith. You can't hide that from me. I know who you are.
Yeah. For the exception of like two scenes, and we'll actually point these out for people to kind of stuff to look out for.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does appear in live action, but not as V, like not as like the suited Guy Fawkes mask V. He's not under there. That's not him. It's not him, folks. It's just not.
Sorry to ruin the magic. Hollywood's a lie.
Yeah. Sorry. Ruin the magic. Yeah, but rounded out by a really great cast, though. We got Natalie Portman, which is universally just acclaim all over the place.
Like people like Natalie Portman and what she does and how she does it. I mean, actually shaves her head for this movie on camera.
Yeah.
Like when that scene happens, that's not a wig. There's nothing fake there. She committed and she delivered.
It was a big deal when she did that, by the way. She like, dominating headlines for dedicating herself to the craft, which it pays off big time. Yeah, and of course we have the late John Hurt in this movie.
Yes.
And then we've rounding it out, we've got Stephen Fry, great comedian, love Stephen Fry.
Yeah, and like also fantastic in this role is for someone who doesn't even have like a lot of times like when you do cast a comedian in a role, you very much get that comedian and the humor you see them do in their stand up. And Stephen Fry acts in this, and not to say that he never acts anywhere, but he acts in this, and it's not like you're getting a Stephen Fry bit inserted into the movie.
Yeah, I agree with you to an extent. Like for a lot of comedians, mixed bag as to what you're going to get, but then you get like a Jim Carrey every now and again, and suddenly, suddenly like, who is this man?
Yes.
Thought we were going to get Ace Ventura. I didn't think we were going to get this,
Which, good on Jim Carrey also by by basically refusing to be Ace Ventura in every movie he does. Well done.
Yes. Now, rounding out our cast would be Stephen Ree and Rupert Graves. And Rupert Graves, I think, is probably going to be the easier one to talk about later because he does show up in a few other properties after this point. As like, I think people see him in the new, the most modern iteration of Sherlock with Benedict Snatch, so whatever his name is.
Smog.
Yes. Smog. I know it's Benedict Cumberbatch. It's just fun to make up things. But yeah, Rupert Graves was in Sherlock, and I think a lot of people saw him and then suddenly started going back and like, holy shit, he was in V for Vendetta.
Yeah.
So yeah, the cast is fantastic, which led to a very good box office performance for a comic book movie of this scale. Only spent $50 million, got 134 back.
Not bad. Not bad at all. Doing the W, getting the double on the profit there. That's solid.
Damn near triple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And good on them for not being like, hey, I know this movie seems to come to a pretty logical conclusion, but what if we make a sequel? No, don't do it. And they didn't.
Yeah. It's true. Yep. They didn't do another one called W for We Doing This Again. So yes, I'm
W, which is 2 V's for Double Vendetta.
Two V's. Oh my God. Oh, that is so bad. The 90s.
I mean, if it was made in the 80s, hands down would have happened. If Alan Moore would have written this in 82 and they got it as a movie in 85, in 87, we'd have W for Double Vendetta.
Yes, two times the Vendetta. God damn it. That would be so that's so fucking 80s. That's so bad. and you know what though? Fun fact, Alan Moore was so disappointed with what happened with some of his other adapted works, didn't accept $1 from this. He said, I don't want to be attached, keep me on out. And it actually ended up being one of the better adaptations from his work that we've seen.
I mean, granted, like, still, even though I was going to say that of all the people who did like this movie, I'm pretty sure Alan Moore was not one of them. He just doesn't like to really see his work being done by anyone else. Because I'm pretty sure, just like Watchmen, I think he was pretty vocal on how much he did not like this movie. But like, hey man, what are you going to do? Like, if we we make this thing frame for frame with the comic book. Like, we're going to be there for a day,
Yeah.
one full day, and no one's sitting through that, man.
Yeah. We need a DeLorean to go back and try to fit all that in.
Yeah, like,
And
could you imagine, like, having to, like, take a day off of work to go see the movie? Like, yeah, go catch this movie. I gotta take the day off.
Yeah, dude,
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
gonna
it
go
makes
see.
sense.
Yeah, I'm gonna go see V for Vendetta. Yeah, I think it's like 19 hours. We should be good.
Mm-hmm.
I can fit
Yep.
that in one total day. Yeah.
Oh
But
my
guess
god.
what? Alan Moore may not be talking about it, but other people were. And just like some of the other films we've covered this season on this program,
Mm-hmm.
we do want to talk about what people were talking about.
Yeah.
And critics gave this a 73% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Audiences decided to give it a nice old 9 out of 10.
There we go. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Joe, you know what that means? I got shits I'm going to read that's here to talk about this.
We got some people talking shit and other people saying it was great. Here we go.
So here we have the first. Now, it was called An Explosive Adventure, the riveting visuals, Portman's powerful performance, and the striking finale combine for a thoroughly entertaining masterwork.
That's pretty good.
I mean,
I would say they liked this movie.
yes, that would definitely fall into the positive column. Now we have more middle of the road.
Mm-hmm.
There is a good message hidden somewhere under the clunky and peremptory politics, but I lost my grasp of it about halfway through.
Oh, I think that was Alan Moore wrote that one.
Yes.
He says it's somewhere because he knows it's his story and he can't completely rip on it.
Yeah, right. This is too personal if I keep dogging it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this one I would put in the purely negative column, although it doesn't feel quite complete. So ordinary people are portrayed as zombies glued to their television sets who need to be galvanized by bombings. Kind of a weird take to make that be your review.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I kind of get it.
I mean, yeah, when we do see like the general public in this movie, they are very sheepish in that they seem to be like they are directly guided on what to do based off of what they see on their television sets. But I mean, it's not always like violent what they see. And
Yeah, but
I think even then that's commentary of what the film's trying to do on how media will guide people very, very easily. But I digress.
Yeah.
Something we can get to eventually. Mm-hmm.
But that review doesn't it make you kind of feel like everybody in the UK is that person who needs to get to the part of the freezer that someone's trying to buy something out of too at the same time, and so rather than go, could you hurry up? They're just sitting there like going, okay, all right, well, I'll just wait here and make that face, and here we go. Like that's what the entire of UK kind of feels like during stretches of this movie. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe that's what a dystopian world would feel like, because that's what this is. It's an authoritarian dictator who rises to power, and so that's what we're dropped into, and we're figuring that out.
Yeah,
so
yeah. And I mean, what's actually is nice in this movie is that we do get to see how that like character did rise to power. That does get I don't want to say spelled out, because spelled out does make it sound like the audience is stupid. like this critic like wanted to explain or say like that's how they thought the audience was shown. But it is explained to you as to how Britain did get this bad. Because when we look at this bad, let's talk about just how the film opens up, where we see V and Evie who's played by Natalie Portman, both of them getting ready for the night. Obviously, like Evie's putting in a dress and V is loading up on knives. They're both getting ready to have very good times, but very different good times. And as they're doing this, you basically have a TV program going on in the background of
state-run media, basically.
State-run media, yeah. I was gonna say if you took I don't know, Fox News and cranked it up to 11, and had it been like this was literally the only thing you got to watch, there was no other opinion or other like news source for you to actually view, that's what they were watching, because that's all they had the option to watch. So, and then they go out into the streets, both of them, and we get Evie immediately being picked up by two what turn out to be secret, basically Gestapo members, and
Yeah.
because a curfew, a code yellow curfew was in effect, so no one was
Yeah.
supposed to be out in the streets after like 8 o'clock.
It, I do think it's important to spend just a moment on this opening scene, though, because it is obviously thematic.
Mm-hmm.
It's designed to be a mirroring on purpose, like you mentioned. You get to see both our main characters getting ready in front of their mirrors, and one is essentially preparing for war, and one is preparing for a different kind of war,
Mm-hmm.
which is living in this regime, having to deal with these things. And you can kind of see her putting on her own mask, as it were, right? The
Yes,
the
a
the,
very
the mask she
figurative
wants.
mask. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes, the mask that she wants everyone to see because there's expectations of her as well. So it's a really well done opener that's not just, hey, this is a bank heist,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to do a bank heist just like every bank heist ever bank heisted, you know, or it's the version of Waiting where they're playing the dick game. It's like, look at my dick, like that's
Mm-hmm.
not this kind of superhero movie.
No.
Like
Mm-mm.
and you've got, like I said, Joe, there's a little bit of that Matrix feeling of the way the camera moves, and
Mm-hmm.
and really kind of plopping you into this soup. So I just want to say that about the opening part of this movie. It's really well
Yeah.
done for a
Mm-hmm.
superhero property. Very artsy,
Yeah,
right?
very artsy. And on that note, if you are someone who likes to watch movies during the daytime, this is not one to watch during the day, as it is a very, I was to say, setting wise, a dark movie. It's basically always night out, and therefore you'll have glare all the time and miss everything that's happening.
I,
So
I mean,
lots, a lot of night
I
games
haven't
going on here.
I haven't lived in the UK, so I can't actually disprove that that's not
That's
what
just,
things are like.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Like, I mean, I have seen several vines of people laughing at how sunglasses are for sale in the UK because you'll never
Yeah.
actually need them. So I'm going based off of that because I haven't been there myself. But it sounds like it's basically Seattle, but with a different accent and different
Yeah,
customs. Hmm.
less like American grunge and just dirty hair, but
Yep.
either
More
way,
more
it's
punk rock, right? That's.
there
Hmm.
is a reason for that, though. This is another one of those random trivia things that jumps out. Do you know what the reasoning was for why we see so much darkness? It's not a plot thing. It's not a canon answer.
Hmm.
There's other reasons for this.
Is it El Nino?
No,
Just storm systems moving in constantly.
no, which is Spanish for the Nino. I'm
The
happy you brought
Nino.
that up.
Oh, rest in
Uh,
peace, Chris Farley.
no, there is an actual functional reason for this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this movie had to be very budget conscious because, well, it didn't have a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things they had to do to save on money was to film in the UK at night because it was easier to shut things down at night. So
Okay.
it's a I mean, I've read the graphic novel a couple times. Like, it's not
Mm-hmm.
pitch black in the
No,
in the
it
comics.
really isn't.
Yeah. So that functional
Mm-hmm.
reason, yes, but it does though. It works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not like Zack Snyder darkness where it's like,
No.
eh, everything is dark. It's like, no, like the feel of what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
that darkness kind of makes sense. It's not just permeating society. It's like in the weather,
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's everywhere. So,
Yeah.
and it makes sense given the setting and the characters. Like even looking at Evie has had a pretty dark life. We come to find out eventually she is an orphan because what's a good hero story without someone being orphaned at some point. So we
Yeah.
get to see the tragic taking of her parents in the movie, and then of course you get to learn the background identity of V himself. Pretty dark. not a lighthearted story with how he came to be and why he's doing what he's doing. And if you're wondering what is the point of all of this, is it just simply one man who hates who is not just betrayed by the you know the country that he loves, or just hates the country that he loves. He is on a vendetta. He is out for revenge. He's trying to kill very specific members of this story because they have failed this country. If
What?
we have to go with a fantastic DC reference, but
Yeah,
yeah, mm-hmm,
yeah. This movie, what I really love about it is that it it does what a comic book can't, and that is use flashbacks
mm-hmm,
successfully, somewhat closer together, right? Um, it's whether or not you care about the immersion breaking effects of that with across media, it doesn't really matter. But when it comes to this movie, it for one, I think you're not going to have bad pacing really at any point throughout this. And so as we kind of go through this film, it's it, there's some TV programs that like specifically just change the color tone and they kind of punch you in the mouth with this is now a
mm-hmm,
flashback. Uh, that's not really what this movie does.
no,
And so as we go through it, you do get little some pieces or little nuggets that kind of flip back.
mm-hmm,
But they do this a couple times though, to your point, Joe, where the flashbacks actually have things in them that haven't happened yet that uh, kind of if you know what to look for, you're like, interesting that that would be here at this point.
mm-hmm,
but they also connect each other. The
yeah,
flashbacks all kind of connect each other as you go. So it's like, okay,
mm-hmm,
I'm appreciating what you did here. So I did really like how they did that. Whether it's about V himself, whether it's about Evie's family, whether it's about the Norse Fire, which is the totalitarian government.
yes, mm-hmm,
It, yeah, it does this in a really it's really well done how they end
mm-hmm.
up doing that.
Yeah, and I'd like to also talk about like how well the movie is paced since you did bring that up. And that is this whole thing revolves around, of course, the story of Guy Fawkes. If you're unfamiliar with that story, because you grew up in the United States and history, little touch and go on how it's taught in the public school system. Uh, it is the story of a man who decided he did not like the way government was running in the UK and was going to there for reset things by blowing up Parliament and literally wheeled a bunch of dynamite under the building with the intent of setting it off. He was, however, caught and hanged for doing so. And I also would like to point out it wasn't like this man just got up and said, "Hey, the government's wrong. I should do something about it." It was actually much more like, "Hey, I like the way the Catholic Church ran things better.
Yes.
Let's give them
Yeah.
power back and blow up this Parliament building." So
Yeah.
everything revolves around the idea of November the 5th, because when you watch the movie, or if you grew up in the UK, obviously you know the remember the 5th of November, which does a little nursery rhyme. It tells the story of Guy Fawkes in a very quick manner. So everything is leading towards the 5th of November. So we get some pretty extreme, I guess, like terrorism by V is how it can be seen. But well, you can see I mean, to the government there, it's terrorism, but to V, it's revolutionary because it's all about perspective sometimes. Um,
Yeah.
but he blows up the Old Bailey pretty early in the movie. And if you're not familiar with the London and its buildings, the Old Bailey is basically like their gigantic old criminal court that has been there since, God, what, the Renaissance? Like, it's been there
Yeah.
forever. So it is him taking a narrative right away, and he does that on November the 5th. So
Yeah.
the whole movie then is looking at, well, why do you blow up the Bailey and not Parliament? Because that's what Guy Fawkes did. So we don't know yet exactly why V is doing what he's doing, because we do unravel the story alongside one of the extremist government's members, who is, I believe, like their head detective. We do get the story revealed through him as well as Natalie Portman's character and V, but we have a year to figure out exactly why V is doing what he's doing, because we're assuming he's going to strike again and strike big by next November 5th. So we get to see kind of progressive anteing up of his work until 1 year later, which is where the movie would end.
You know what? When it comes to the opening sequence here with the Bailey explosion, uh, I want to backtrack for a brief moment to when he first meets Evie,
Mm-hmm.
because he walks into this alley. She knows about the curfew, so she's trying to skirt through the side streets and get to this party she's supposed to be at. And the first time that we are introduced to V, and once again a very stylized action sequence that just it looks damn good even
Mm-hmm.
18 years later.
Yeah.
Uh, it's just it's just a fun it's a really fun intro because it doesn't do too much,
Mm-hmm.
and it also sets up V in a really good way because, for one, as you've mentioned, he speaks in theater and loves the letter V in his word
Mm-hmm.
choice, and so when you, for me, I think main characters, when they're a little bit eccentric but you're still scared of them, I think you're off to a good start.
Yeah, that works.
And so and that's kind of what he is here. You're a little
Mm-hmm.
scared of him because of how effective a fighter he is, but then he's seemingly also very intelligent. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
all right, I mean, you could turn that dial just a little bit and you've got a villain. So it's like,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
And I like how you did state that it's not like over the top right off the way. It's not like we're getting like it's him versus a massive group of people and he takes them all out, doesn't take a scratch. It is he's saving Evie Hammond from two other guys. So it's
yeah,
believable, it's plausible. It's like, yeah, I think if a guy knew what the hell he was doing, he could take out two other guys, no problem.
yeah,
I think it worked very well, and then the action itself wasn't over the top, and that was kind of a part of like where, again, when we say we have this veteran Matrix team, the Matrix was entirely over the top, but that's what it was supposed to be. It was
yeah.
supposed to be unbelievable and just insane what you could do because you're in a computer simulation. It's not like your actual body or anything. But this was like, hey, I think a guy with knives and some solid trading could do that. Like that works. It wasn't crazy.
No, not at all. That's
Mm-hmm.
why I think and once again, I'm speaking so highly of this is that, yeah, too many times you start off like a movie like X-Men and suddenly you just see explosions and
Yeah.
large pieces of things are being thrown by people and you're like, okay, I think this is just a CGI fest. I'm gonna let this go for a bit.
Yeah. I
Right?
mean, there's like a guy Hugh Jackman without a shirt on. Like that lets you forget a lot of the things that happen. No
Yeah.
topless dudes in this one. Well, I mean,
No.
there's one dude without a shirt, but really, you could go
It's a
without
sh-
seeing it. It's fine.
it's a
You
sh-
didn't have to
it's
see
a
that.
shower. You
Yeah.
should not have a shirt on in the
No, he
shower.
shouldn't. You really should.
You
Unless
know?
it's a lot of really weird issues when he was a kid. Who
Yeah.
knows?
He's the guy at the water park wearing a t-shirt. Yeah.
Hmm.
There's some stuff going on there. But it's so yes, I think it's done right. It's not too much. But the of course the rest of the pacing of this,
Hmm.
like if we're talking about like acts 1, 2 and 3, I kind of throw that stuff out for this because this movie feels like three separate acts of like really quickly moving things.
Hmm.
Like it's I hate to say something and then take it right back so you sound like a dumbass, but it's true. Okay, if we're gonna break it up into
Hmm.
acts, we'll use the damn act structure. Okay,
Hmm.
each act it moves really fast, but it's not all about the same things,
Hmm.
and that's what I really love about it. Like it it uh it throws some great mysteries. And here's the thing: I know it sounds
Hmm.
like, hey, once again, you are tiptoeing around the subject of a movie, and it's because I don't want to write everything out. Okay,
Yeah.
you,
Hmm.
there's no reason to watch this if you haven't seen, if you
No.
just listen to what
No.
we
No. No.
say.
No. Hmm.
but but
No.
like
But I
in
mean,
the yeah, go ahead.
I say I think you saying that this is something that happens in three acts is actually, I think, very appropriate for what this is. Although I would argue against like it being like three acts of completely different things. I think it's definitely three acts of Evie is what we get in this because she is honestly where we have that. I'm always gonna. I think I mean too many times go back to the one critic saying is how like the people are seen as stupid. Um,
Yeah,
I think the masses can be seen as stupid in this movie or easily controlled because, as we've seen with humans, when you're put into large groups, like you kind of go with the group. A very few people will just say, no, hey, I'm not doing this. This is wrong, when they see literally everyone else doing it. I mean, they're different. Like they're like, I think that was it. Like the Harvard prison study shows that people
Yeah.
will just go straight into torturing people because other people are torturing people. Like this is what happens. But Evie Hammond is the individual. Evie
Yes.
Hammond is the person that we are meant to associate ourselves with, and hopefully have people who think critically in their day-to-day lives. Because
Yeah.
we see Evie as someone who is, she knows she does not like where she lives and she knows something is wrong, but like a lot of people feel like she can't really do anything about it, but she's then thrust into this situation with V, and everything that's revealing about V is revealed through Evie in this movie. Whereas if she wasn't there, we wouldn't have learned these background things about V, with the exception of maybe one or two details about him as he reveals them to other people in the movie. But for the vast majority, it is very much the ignorant but smart Evie to the I'm in this and don't know what to do next Evie. I may be in over my head, to the nope, I'm gonna fucking do this Evie towards the end. So I think having it as I'm saying that this is a movie of three acts is very appropriate.
Well, and to that point, Evie is the only person who turns off the propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, that's enough of you, and she shuts it off. Whereas almost literally everybody else that we see keeps that TV set on.
Yeah.
So right away, yeah, you're right. We get the naive version who,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, doesn't take a whole lot of shit, but is still living in this.
Yeah.
What really starts to evolve though, as she hangs around V, and we, they continue this friendship slash romance ship, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
We do start to get some breadcrumbs into the reasoning behind the things that V is doing. Now, obviously, overthrowing tyranny, blah blah blah. We get that stuff, all
Yeah.
right. But what we are also getting are very specific dominoes falling for a reason that we don't quite get.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You've got some characters that V is starting to go after personally, and it's like, it's for more than just cutting him off in a merge lane. Like there is something much bigger going on here
Yeah.
that he's
Mm-hmm.
upset about. So that's part of that mystery that I really love, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
That I was going to kind of in parallel talk about as these three things, right? Like if we have Evie starting off, Evie rising, and then the dark Evie returns.
Yeah.
Like we
Mm-hmm.
get that part.
Evie
But
begins. Evie.
yeah. But
Mm-hmm.
what I've kind of broken it up into is Act 1, we're becoming familiar with this V and what
Mm-hmm.
V is. And that middle part is, what is the mystery of V and where V came from. And then you have the Act 3, which is also the dark V rises. So it's a similar type of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But as we navigate through the early portions of Evie and then her transformation, this mystery of why V is V, and the transformation of Evie to part 2, done at the same time.
Yes.
and
Mm-hmm.
and so it's fantastic, as you mentioned, Joe, that you could have two critically different characters that are becoming the same. Like it's a really cool thing that
Yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
haven't really seen in a ton of movies. I don't know
No,
if you've seen something like this before.
not really. Like this is very, it's interesting in that, like I say, like, that there's fantastic development of characters, like especially really the only two characters that develop. We get three characters that develop in the movie. We have Evie, V, and then our detective. Uh, but V is interesting, the fact that he develops but doesn't change. And
Yeah.
it's very important that V doesn't change. He shouldn't change. He is like the driving force behind the revolution that is to come in this movie. And you have, like, again, like it's rife with symbolism, as it's supposed to be, because he's constantly talking in alliteration or Shakespearean language. The Count of Monte Cristo is his favorite movie. We've got
Yeah.
lots of things behind him, and he is always in the mask throughout the entire movie. There are a few times, like you even brought up at the start of the podcast, over the what did he say? Not the duplicity, but the not
Oh, yeah.
oxymoron, but the
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What I or you asked me who I am and
mhm.
who is a function of what, and what I am is a man in a mask.
Yes.
Yeah,
And then Evie's like, I can clearly see that you're a man in a mask. And he's like, I'm not. He's like, it's not a question of your observation, but so much as the God. Basically, why are you asking a guy in a mask who he is? Like,
yeah, yeah.
duh, I have the mask on for a reason. Like, I'm not going to tell you who I am, but I digress. There are a few times throughout the movie where, like, it's hinted that someone wants V to take the mask off, and he won't because he is very, very much set that who he is under the mask is not important at all. It is very much the idea of what he's trying to do is the important part. Therefore, like the person under the mask doesn't matter. He's like,
Yeah.
basically, it shouldn't matter that you see him without his mask, so it's not worth him taking it off in the first place. So he, again, very set on that the entire movie and unwavering in the idea that he is carrying out.
Yeah. And the way he speaks about it
Mm-hmm.
too, it's even just the way he generally speaks has nothing to do with himself. It has everything to do with these concepts of,
Mm-hmm.
revenge, justice, fighting back. And so even as I know he's a fictional character and all that, but
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
even though we're not the characters in the movie, it's not hard to appreciate the theatricality of this
Mm-hmm.
man in a Guy Fawkes mask and a wig and a really awesome looking hat.
Yep.
you know,
And a cape, my God! Like I know the whole incredible thing, like no capes. It's like back off the cape.
yeah,
Capes are awesome.
Edna, you're wrong
Mm-hmm.
here. Okay,
Yeah.
he's never going to be in the sky, so we're
No,
not doing
he doesn't
that.
have to worry about being sucked into a jet engine. He's fine.
Yeah. Hey, but okay, so as this mystery develops, right,
Mm-hmm.
and how it relates to V, as far as tying these former people together that he knew clearly, and what they were working on. Well, we talked about the Norse Fire, which is this
Mm-hmm.
totalitarian regime. It leads the dystopian UK, and up until this point, we know that they've been responsible for some pretty shitty things,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
right? Like they're removing people from society that they deem unworthy, and
Mm-hmm.
just for the sake of the fact that we didn't really do the triggering art, stuff in the beginning, we're not going to get too far into it here, right?
No. Mm-mm.
But ultimately, this leads to what we find out is a place called Larkhill. And
Yes.
when you talked about the detectives poking around through doing their own investigation while trying to hunt down V for his terrorism,
Mm-hmm.
they're starting to find stuff about their government that they're not even sure what to think about. Now, Joe, this is some hard hitting stuff that I want to read really quick, just in case folks have not seen or read V for Vendetta. Here's an
Yes.
explanation of Larkhill told in the way that it would be told in the V for Vendetta universe. So, Larkhill is a mysterious facility that's redacted, a place where redacted happens. There were redacted involved in a redacted.
Oh.
That's Larkhill.
Okay. I was
Yes.
actually expecting you to say that's redacted after that for a second there.
It-
Um.
yes. So the entire point is, no matter where these guys go,
Mm-hmm.
they're figuring stuff out about one of their victims in particular and where she worked previously, and they begin to connect the dots to this Larkhill place, which you guessed it, the government has removed everything about
Yes.
this
Mm-hmm.
place.
Because when we look at like the government in this movie, when I said they were like Gestapo members like earlier, like that's not even an unfair comparison. Like it is.
Yeah.
You look at how you have this set up. You do have John Hurt at the very top of the government. He is, for all intents and purposes, Hitler in this movie. He is
Yeah.
the totalitarian regime leader. And then you look at how he rose to power, and how he did it was by controlling very specific aspects of the country.
Yeah.
So we talked about how we had the media that was government controlled by this. we talk about how like they're detectives who are part of the police who are completely controlled by the federal government in this case, because like they said, there's stuff that they have no idea about their own government that they're figuring out as they go along. You do have like healthcare is taken care of through them, and even religion, like is I think it's basically like the Church of England in this case is completely controlled by the government here. So they've woven themselves into very specific like aspects of like our day-to-day lives and brought out the worst bits of that. And by the worst bits of it, it is the parts of all those things that kind of prey on our fears. And they expose those and they bring them to the forefront and say that these are actual things we should always be afraid of, and we're going to take care of them for you. We'll be united and you will listen to us because we took care of the bad guys, sort of thing. Um, and
Yeah.
that's how they came to power, is they made sure they had the right people in the right parts so that it was basically a landslide like takeover, and that it appeared to be a fair vote that John Hurt came to power, but turns out nope, shit was fucked from the start, and there was a plan to take care of this whole thing.
I think for me, the finding this stuff out about the Norse fire was that it was scary how that same kind of strategy that they're using behind the scenes to do these things. I I think what makes that scary is that you could see how simple that would be for your own politicians to do this kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where we're telling the news media these are the talking points you're going to cover,
Yep.
and then they just go out there and send the message, right?
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing happens here. Um, the other part of it that scares the shit out of me is that when the High Chancellor, when he says, "What are we hearing over the waves?" It's like, no, this isn't a police scanner. He's literally talking about tapping every single phone in the country
Mm-hmm.
and trying to figure out what the sentiment is, right?
Yeah. And I mean,
Ugh.
it's not even just phone tapping. It's literally they have vans going around with like listening so that you can like like the stuff you see like police using, like I've got my little radar and my headset and I'm listening to things like 30 feet away. Like there are vans with those cruising around listening to what people are saying in their homes.
Yeah.
So they have pretty much complete control over the conversation, or at least to know what the conversation is throughout the country.
And that's what's really cool about this storyline as the plot unfolds, because
Mm-hmm.
as we get near the end of the film, naturally this kind of stuff would get to a fever pitch. But
Yes. Mm-hmm.
the police, who are seemingly honest, actually hardworking people, that
Mm-hmm.
maybe they don't actually buy into this as much, so they're willing to dig a little bit deeper than
Yeah.
most.
Mm-hmm.
But they're fighting against the regime's efforts to literally control, like, not just every aspect of life, but holding everything accountable on the way to some of these secrets.
Mm-hmm.
And as they get close, their own people get in the way,
Yep.
right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
as they get close, another dead end. And so, to your point, Joe, about Hugo Weaving actually getting into the live action for once,
Mm-hmm.
he does actually interact with this police crew that are trying to find out who is
Yes.
who and where the
Mm-hmm.
bodies are hid. Unfortunately, I say that like it's a good thing, where it's actually serious. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but this is where we actually get to see him meet with the people who are trying to find him, except they think he's someone else.
Yes. Yeah, he's faking them a little bit. Which we are talking about basically because that happens towards the end of the movie, and one of the things that happen towards the end of the movie is one final badass fight scene that does have to happen in this. This is the exact opposite of what I said happened in the beginning of the movie, and it is where V now has a plethora of dudes to take care of, instead of just two. But instead of ruining it completely for you, there is a little commentary I would like to make about here, and that this is the only Matrix-like fight that we have, and that the most of this fight is done completely in slow motion. And while that I think is excusable, what I find is the only thing that kind of took me out of this a little bit is because I felt like because there wasn't a lot of CGI done in this movie, like, you know what? We got to squeeze a little in here. we got to get something in because the practical movie magic just doesn't cut anymore. Let's do something. And it's not what you think. It's not like they're using it to actually have it where V is CGI, but when he's twirling the knives around, there's like this stylistic, like
Yeah, whoosh, like a
whooshing.
cut, like yeah,
Yeah, yeah, like the just of the knife moving through the air, and that, yeah. I mean, some people. I mean, I probably thought it was cool when I first saw the movie, and didn't have a taste of the modern CGI work that's in movies. It's the one part of this movie where I think it doesn't hold up very well. Is it just
yeah.
doesn't really look as good. Like it takes you out of what would otherwise be an incredible fight scene towards the end of the movie.
Now, one thing that I do want to say that this might change your opinion of this scene.
Mm-hmm.
So this scene was actually shot in real time. So like how the action you mentioned, this is a slow-mo
Mm-hmm.
sequence, right? They're not slowing down the film. That's how fast the actors and V were actually moving because they had all the security guards
Mm-hmm.
move purposefully slowly while V moved faster than them, the stuntman did, right?
Ah.
So like everything
Mm-hmm.
you see is not like slowed down with technology and the knives, yes, but
Mm-hmm.
everything else is this combination of one guy going like this while moving fairly quickly while everybody else is kind of shifting slowly.
Mm-hmm. Well,
They had to save money.
I do.
That's
Well,
your point.
I do, I do have a lot of appreciation for that. Where I thought you were going with this is I thought you were going to pull a fast one on me and say what a lot of people don't know about this is for the last scene they used actual bullets,
Yeah.
real gun food for the last one. And it's like, oh shit, someone died.
Yeah.
People died in that last scene, guys. Wow.
Yeah, that's why 4 different people played him. That character. They just next up mentality, everybody.
Yep.
Here we go.
Didn't get the
Go on.
whole thing in one shot. Nope.
Yeah. Yeah. Which
Mm-hmm.
which honestly, uh I'm actually kind of happy we didn't go through like all the stuff that Evie goes through
Mm-hmm.
in the middle because it's a little rough to, for one, explain to somebody without ruining,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
But
Mm-hmm.
by the time we get to the end here, though, I do like how they balance her full story,
Mm-hmm.
and it never really feels like you're focusing too much on any one person, right? Like they managed to really help her get to this endpoint in the same time in the film that you're talking about, where she feels almost like a commando.
Yeah.
She can
Mm-hmm.
fit in wherever she goes. She's confident in herself and all that. But I really do like how, even though they changed a lot of this source material, once again, we're not getting to
Mm-hmm.
that, but I do like with where they end this journey, for Evie and V. The whole poetic nature of this movie never really take the foot off of that gas.
No. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so in a way, Joe, what I liked about how they choose to wrap things up here at this point is that we do end up feeling like V was fighting for a tomorrow that he wasn't going to be alive for,
Mm-hmm.
and Evie, even though she's supposed to be the next generation, right? It's like the perfect little handoff.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
You feel like she's on the same level as V, but I think she's in a better place than he was at that same time in his life.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know?
And again, when we say that there's a lot of symbolism in this movie, the moment where we see Evie basically becoming like I guess the symbol of like the new post-fascist government, um, uh, is very reminiscent of what like V's origin story is.
Yeah.
And we see this parallel between fire and rain happening in a very un-James Taylor sort of way, where we can see that we've seen both characters go through a similar transformation, but come out of it differently from each from each other.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I do really like that because as much as their journeys are similar, it's gorgeous to see how
Mm-hmm.
bluntly they they do that, like you said, like the difference between all the fire around V, but then all the rain around Evie, like those beginnings, even though they're both for justice, they can be that different and yet still be the same.
Yeah.
And it's, and I think that's what I think V truly learns from. Now, one thing about V, I will bring this one up, the comic versus the movie. V is very much violent in every possible way, and killing innocents doesn't bother him.
No.
Right? Like he goes full on Zack Snyder with his superheroes who just kill everything. And that's just how V was in the comic, right? He's kind of like this in the beginning, but his relationship with, Evie softens that little by little. And some of that feels like romantic because they kind of go that route. But I think even, I think most of us could see that it's like, maybe it's just puppy dog a little bit.
Maybe.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But
which, so it brings us to like what we think of like the legacy of what this movie is when we think of like how it ended and how it can be perceived now. Because when we look at it, it's not an original message over like the issues of a government having too much power over its people, and the way it delivers that, some people could argue cartoonish, in that like we have a very like blatant like symbol for the new government. It's like, you know what? I think red and black and that combination of the way that you did it, kind of scary. And I don't think a lot of people get behind that. It's a little too much like what's been done before. And you could say it's a little over the top with it. But like, I think like that being done over the top for a reason is good, because it just immediately hits you like, okay, this is what the movie's trying to tell us. And it's not going to be a long drawn out plot over, hey, we shouldn't trust the government fully. While that's a part of the story, it's not the main part of the story. So having that cartoonish caricature of a fascist government, I think worked for what it was trying to do. And when you look at a lot of other movies that are a whole like, don't trust the government and you've got to think for yourself sort of thing, I think this movie does a very, very good job compared to others that do it. And I would say even modern representations of that same story. So I think taking that idea and doing it very well and being able to go back and see it and still see it done very well for the modern cinema, I think is a part of its, a big part of its legacy. Yes.
Well, I think the easiest thing to point out in the legacy of this movie as to the effectiveness of an idea such as the character of V is the fact that we've got anti-fascism groups. We've got an Anonymous that forms, not Anonymous has been around for longer than that, but they adopt the Guy Fawkes mask in their imagery, and that ends up becoming the worldwide symbol for, anti and, for injustice movements, right? Like, so I would say the imagery of what V stands for and what they're trying to do, I don't think anybody got that part of the assignment wrong. I think they figured that out. So I would say culturally, this might have even invigorated generations like ours, maybe a little bit younger, maybe a tad older. And that really was the thing that I think you saw happen overnight.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's trying to get behind Guy Fawkes, even if the real Guy Fawkes wasn't that great.
Not kind of an asshole, really. But I think that's where we get to leave off. And in closing, thank you for continuing to listen to Digital Dissection. And as always, we appreciate all the Dissection crew does for us week after week. Your support goes a long way for us here on the podcast. And just in case you did happen upon today's show by accident, please like, subscribe, stick around, keep on coming back, leave a comment or two, and hey, if you got some time, even a review.
And of course, we also love hearing from you. Feel free to message us over at digitaldissectionpodcast@gmail.com. We welcome your ideas for future shows and possible revolutions and anything you'd like to discuss. Until next time, keep on dissecting.